Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Peter Ture from Business Review, and I'll be your host today. It is our pleasure to have with us Catalyst Clinical Research, who will be presenting a webinar titled Accelerating Clinical Studies While Reducing Operational Costs. Now, today's guest speakers of us will be Betsy Brown, who is the Vice President at Catalyst Flex Growth Strategy. We also have with us Kathy Bradrick, who is the Catalyst Senior Vice President of Resource and Operations. We also have with us Maggie Neptune, who is the Clinical Strategy and Operations Consultant. And finally, we have with us Erin Tabbitt, who is the Catalyst Executive Director of Business Development, as well as should be our moderator for today's session. Now, before we begin, I'd like to welcome everyone here to On24. You'll notice that this platform is browser-based, so if you do disconnect for any reason whatsoever, please just click on the link that you received via email to rejoin the session. We'll then allocate some time at the end of the session to address any thoughts or questions that you may have. Also, if you would like to resize, maximize, and move your screens, you can use it to your advantage to ensure though that you get a better view of today's session. You can also ask questions, and we will then address them and during the Q&A section, so please feel free to type into the box and we will address them when we come to this part of today's webinar. But for now, please allow me to hand you over to Erin, who will introduce. Erin, over to you.
Hey, thanks so much, Peter. Really appreciate the kickoff. And hi, everyone. I'm Erin Tabbitt, Executive Director of Business Development with Catalyst, as Peter mentioned. And I have been with Catalyst for about 1.5 years, and I am based on the East Coast in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And I just want to say we are kind of right in the middle of ELSA. So if you see some of us fade out or have to log back in, that's probably why. We're kind of having tropical depression here. So just want to mention that. But I want to kick things off and just say, fluctuating resourcing demand has been a challenge for the clinical research industry for many years, as we all know. But more recently, the demand for flexible and innovative solutions to address these challenges have become more pressing. And Maggie, I want to kick it over to you. If you could share with us some approaches you've used or seen employed in the industry over the years. Specifically, from your perspective, being on the sponsor side, how you've been able to deal with this during the COVID slowdown, and then now we're seeing the recovery, which has led to the bolus of work collected over the past year.
Maggie?
Maggie, I think you're on mute.
Can we send her an email or text?
Yeah, I got it.
Hello, Maggie. Could you please unmute yourself if you're there?
Yes, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I had put myself on mute because I was coughing, and now I apologize. You missed the best part of my presentation, so anyway, sorry about that. I'm Maggie Neptune, and thank you, Catalyst, for inviting me to participate in this important webinar. I've been in the industry for about 35 years, worked in academics and big pharma, and now my passion is as a consultant, which I've been doing for about 10 years, is to help startup companies get their new products, at least a proof of concept. I've always been thinking about ways to do things better, faster, cheaper, but without sacrificing quality of the study, because, our first job is to put the patients first and then to put the drug first. We have to do what's best for that. So doing all that without sacrificing our quality or, frankly, our mental health, because we know that we're all overachievers in this industry. In the current environment in which I work, a flexible approach, which is something that I actually started using several years ago, is absolutely perfect. And for two reasons. One, in a startup company where you have limited time, limited resources, you've got to optimize everything. And then COVID sort of hit us with the double whammy, right? Because we had to start working differently. We're in a completely new atmosphere. And I know about this because I worked on some of the initial treatment trials in the second quarter of 2020, for COVID. So even though we feel like, oh yeah, okay, now we're over COVID and things can get back to normal and a lot of centers are opening up our clinical trials, it's not the same, and it's not going to be the same for many industries, but especially, I think, for us. So let's just take a step back and look at what we have available to us now. There is the traditional approach where the entire project is outsourced to one full-service CRO. And this has been very common, and it's still useful in some very specific environments, okay? Very specific trials. But other options could include, breaking up your functional areas and assigning each of those to a different vendor. So you still have everything outsourced, but they're all at different vendors. On the other hand, some sponsors, especially smaller companies who live and die on the success of their first clinical trial, want to keep some things in-house because they worry about maintaining control, but they may not be able to hire the certain expertise that they need. And so they will be looking for people with that expertise. So you really need to build a very cohesive team between your vendors and your in-house people. The other thing, though, is, which we all know, we ride a roller coaster every day of our lives in this industry. We are up and down in terms of resourcing, the trials. I mean, as I once said to a colleague of mine who worked in preclinical and was frustrated with an enrollment timeline, I said, well, you know what? We can't put patients in cages and feed them and then check on them every day. They're people. So whenever you introduce people into an equation, you can have all kinds of fun things happen. And so some days you absolutely have nothing to do. And other days you are so busy that you think you will never sleep again. And that's why, at least for me, I've always felt like, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we could have what we needed when we need it and not have to use it and feel guilty about not using it when we don't need it. So I do want to talk for 1 second about how COVID affected all of this. The first thing that really hit was there were no on-site visits. I mean, you couldn't even go and qualify a site. So unless you knew that site before, you had to get really creative about how you would suss out whether or not they could do it. And as we all know, when you're talking with the investigators, the first thing they say is, oh, yes, we can enroll this study in 2 weeks with 100 patients, and don't worry. And it's not until you talk to the people who do all the work at the site where you find out, yeah, I have 10 studies and I'm dying. But in COVID, it was different because not only were all of us having to work from home, but all the site people were having to work from home too. So, and many centers were just shutting off monitors. They were shutting off any studies that weren't deemed critical. So if they were not life-saving, I mean, I happen to be working on a couple of diagnostic agents right now, and those just were not important. So we had just initiated one huge study in January, and by February, we were locked out of everything. So in a way, what happened with COVID for all companies trying to do clinical trials sort of mirrored what happens, I think, almost every day in startup companies, where you have a completely different paradigm. You understand that you're operating under GCPs and ICH and CFR and everything else, but you don't have tons of people, you don't have lots of money, and you don't usually have very much time. And so those of us who have been working in a flexible paradigm were put off by all the restrictions in COVID, but could find ways around it. One of the challenges I had was there was a CRO that I had to work with who very, a very good CRO, except that they just couldn't get their heads around being flexible. The only people that could were the biostats, but the data management people, the monitors, they had SOPs that they had to go to, and that made it very hard for them. And I told them, the FDA during this time was perfectly fine with giving us leeway. Let's not do anything illegal or unethical, but let's get in there and try to get these studies done, especially in COVID. And FDA will also do that for smaller companies. They will help you out. They will talk to you. So there were so many challenges. And what I found was, let's put a team together, just like I always like to do. And we'll have some people in-house, and we'll have some people, that will be working in the CRO. And then as we ride the wave of COVID and everything else, we'll use them as we need them. So that's why I'm excited about today's webinar, because this is exactly what Catalyst does. And I'm going to turn it back to Erin so she can get me to be quiet for a while and take on. Thanks.
Thank you, Maggie. That was such a great, overview, and you touched on so many different topics. And, in addition to the points that Maggie made, we've heard from many sponsors about the success they've experienced with utilizing the flexible resourcing models like this. So Betsy and Kathy, I want to dig into this further. Can you both share the overall benefit of this approach and describe the makeup of the model, kind of what you've seen?
Yeah, thanks, Erin. I'll kick it off. Hi, I'm Betsy. Hello, everyone. I've been in the industry like Maggie for over 30 years, started as a monitor, which was one of my favorite jobs, and ended up as a director in a large CRO of the monitoring department. And that's when I realized that flexible resourcing was something I wish I'd had. So I started my first resourcing company in '95. Catalyst is my third and final, and I've been here since the beginning. So quickly, I want to tell you about our model. First of all, we offer resourcing across clinical, safety, and biometrics across all therapeutic areas. It's a little bit different for each area. On the clinical side, where I've spent most of my time, we have a network of independent contractors. It's a network we've built over the 30 years. It's a referral-based network. And typically on the clinical side, we build the project team to the client's specifications, and people are not 100%. They can be 100% if that's what the client needs. But we therapeutic align everybody, and we put them in the right geography. So we work with the client on what makes sense. If you need 5 FTEs, is that a team of 10? Is that a team of 5? Is that a team of 12 because of the site distribution? Then on the biometric side, and Kathy might speak more to this later, those people in data management tend to be 100%, so they would be Catalyst employees. So like I said, we build a spec, we offer across all therapeutic areas, and in the right geography. So Kathy, do you want to go next?
So this is Kathy Broderick. I'm the SVP of our resourcing operations, and like Betsy and Maggie and Erin, I've been in the industry for many years. I've been with the company for about 5 years, and like the rest of my colleagues, based here in the RTP North Carolina area, where we are experiencing the remnants of ELSA as we speak. So I guess the first thing I'd like to talk about, the benefit of our model, is that the client gets to retain as much control as they want in the study. So if they want to maintain 100% control, where we're using the sponsor's SOPs, we're using the sponsor's processes, the sponsor's systems, et cetera, and they simply need additional resources or hands to get things done, we can give them talented clinical research professionals, and they can guide the work as they see fit under their SOPs and their processes. We also could give them some control or some management. For example, if they wanted a lead CRA to oversee a CRA team and manage that team, and then our lead CRA report into the sponsor project manager, we can do it that way. And then we can also do a more fully outsourced model where it's under our SOPs and under our systems and such like that. So it's up to the sponsor how much control they want to maintain.
Yeah, and I just want to also mention onto Kathy's comments that when you align a team therapeutically and with experienced monitors, my experience has been that it's a cost saving to the client, which just makes sense. And we do have data to support this. But if you take an oncology study, which is difficult, and you put someone with 15 years experience who's an oncology nurse, when they go into the site, they're just going to work more efficiently. They're going to connect with the site better, which the site likes. They're going to be able to read those charts faster. And we have some studies where the sponsor has told us out the gate, it's going to be 2 days monitoring on site, for example, and we've done it consistently in a day and a half and come in 30% under budget. So it's something that I believe strongly in terms of therapeutic alignment.
Yeah, and the other thing is you get to choose the team that you work with. So we encourage you to interview the team and really get to understand and know the project team and the personnel and make sure that they align with what you need. You're always going to get the A team from us because you're involved in the choice. And typically our people have 10 years or greater of experience in the industry, not only with your therapeutic area, but also just in the industry in general. They're very experienced, and that tends to lend to more efficiency as well.
Right. And to Kathy's point, not only do you choose your team, but the team chooses you. So I think it's very important that when we have experience, our clinical resourcing managers are also from the industry. They're your recruiter, and they will call each person and say, this is the client, here's the monitoring schedule, the duration, here's your pay rate, which of course is important. Is this something you're interested in? And the person can say yes or no. And we don't like to send the client a lot of CVs. We like to do the front end work on our side. Your time's very valuable. So when I send you a team to select from, they are fully vetted. And I think that's one of the reasons our turnover rate, and that's what you're used to hearing probably is turnover rate, is so low. We call it a project retention rate because we measure it per project. For example, if you're not working with me, you could care less if I left. But what you want to do is you want to retain your team. So at the end of each project, we measure that, and we run in the high 90s. And I think it's because we work very hard to make a fit from the beginning. And a contract CRA, for example, if they've made a commitment to a project, there's no reason for them to leave. I'm not saying we don't have turnover. Of course we do. Life happens. But they have made a commitment. They would rather stay till the end of the project because if they switch jobs, they have to learn a whole new system again. So it's just that our model is different, and I think that's really helped with project retention. Yeah,
that's right. And like you said, depending on the way you set it up, this model can really lend itself to lower project turnover rate and a high project team retention. The team that starts the project more times than not is going to end your project, which just lends itself to a more efficient study all around.
Right. And, another area where we're very flexible, like Kathy mentioned, is the amount of control you have over the study. So going back to a cultural fit, what we try to do is listen to what you want. And I'll use communication as an example. If you want to call your monitor after each visit, please do. They're your team. We're not trying to keep you, away from your monitoring team. And some clients like that. And, as Kathy said, or you might say, I don't have time for that. I really need a lead CRA to manage the team. And it's your choice. We'll sit down and just discuss it with you, the time you have, the availability you have, and how much you want us to pick up for you.
Yeah, going back to that team retention rate, they are the advocates for your sites. And if that team retention rate is high, that leads to a better relationship with your sites and better rapport, with your sites. And, let's face it, sites have competing protocols. And if they have a good relationship with their monitor and they know and trust their monitor, they're going to hopefully pay, a good amount of attention to your study and help with your enrollment. I mean, that site is the key to getting your enrollment, done on time. And not only that, they're your customer of the future. Those sites are going to be the people prescribing your product in the future to their patients. So they want to build that trust in you, and that monitor is that liaison for you with that site.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one point to Maggie's comment about the pandemic. In the pandemic, a lot of things came to a screeching halt. And because of our model, we were able to just go, the sponsor wasn't committed to us and didn't say, okay, I have these people on retainer 100%. So we went to people and said, sorry, this study's ending. We're not going to have any work for you for whatever period of time. And, I would say to the sponsor, that's fine, we'll stop work. I can't guarantee that team's going to be available when you do start back up. If they are, great. They'll be the first people we go back to. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised how many project teams did stay intact. I had a lot of monitors say, this is a nice break for me. I'm not traveling. I've found enough things to do from home for the clients. But it is a benefit that we can start and stop. And now that things are gearing back up, we have clients calling us saying, I needed 5 monitors. Now I'm going to need 8 because there's a backlog at the sites, and we can add on what we call floaters, for example. You can divide the sites up into smaller pools, and, we can easily add resources to pick it back up.
Yeah, and I also just want to touch on the biometric side of things too. We have a lot of sponsors that decide to bring, for example, their data management or their stat programming in-house to standardize things across their different products, across their different programs, but they just might not have the arms and legs to scale up and scale down as studies are coming to an end. For example, if there's a database lock or if there's a submission coming up and they need extra resources. And so there's a lot of things on the biometric side that we can do as well to help lend a hand to your successful program. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Erin.
Yep. Thank you so much, Betsy and Kathy. Those were, really thorough examples of how we work. And I would like how many options there are for sponsors using this type of resource and model that contribute to making it a successful approach. I'd like to switch it back to the sponsor perspective. And Maggie, I'd also like to get your perspective on some of these benefits in this model. Do you mind digging in and maybe giving us some more details? Oh, I think you're on mute still, Maggie.
Yep, I'm back off.
There you go.
This happens on NBC. So,
Well, it's the world we live.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That is. I do think there are some real specific things that I can say about this. So one of the biggest challenges, especially for smaller companies or startup companies, is money. Let's face facts. Everybody's out there raising money, and especially during the pandemic, that got even more interesting. So if you can't afford to hire staff internally and keep them busy, you probably can't afford to hire external staff and promise to keep them busy either. So retainer agreements are, sort of a word of the past, if you will. But then the problem is you're constantly at the mercy of everyone's queues, from a vendor, from a CMO, down to independent monitors. Everyone has a queue because we all need to buy the kibble and we're all busy. So you've got to be able to somehow know that you will have expertise available when you need it without having to spend a lot of money retaining those people. And so, and I think that we all understand that, because we all would like a regular paycheck. And in our industry, we've been very fortunate through the pandemic that many of us have been able to stay busy. Although monitors have really felt a big impact just because of their inability to get on sites. So here's an example, and I'll use one that we did with Catalyst. Recently, we had a study put on hold because of the pandemic, but we needed to keep moving forward, and we needed statistical input for another study that actually Catalyst wasn't going to support us in, because it was in an area where the sponsor would get a tax break if they used a local company. But Catalyst jumped right in and gave us a really good statistician who wrote a SAP for us, helped me write the protocol, and graciously turned everything over when the study was able to open up again. So what we didn't have to do was hire the team in this other country and keep them, keep paying them. We had a team here at Catalyst. And because of that, what we've decided is that no matter where we go, Catalyst now will hold all the data for this entire program. And they will bring in the data from this one study that's outside the country, even though I know they can operate outside the country. We didn't go there. We went there for tax reasons only. But they'll bring it all in and they'll keep it all centralized. And so when we're ready to do a submission, we'll have that. The other thing I want to mention, too, is pharmacovigilance. So Catalyst has an outstanding pharmacovigilance team, too. And we're talking to them now about, well, how can we, one of my clients is talking to them about, well, how can we utilize that regardless of where we do studies and who does them and everything else. And what you will not find from Catalyst is you're going to find them offering their services, but I like it because, the best analogy is I never buy my own cars. I send my son in to do the dirty work. So, because I don't like talking to salespeople, no offense, Erin, but you never get that pressure. And it's good because I feel like I can make an objective decision. And then when I go back to my client, I have really good information. And they can listen because it's not like, oh, they're really nice. And no, it's like, this is an objective decision here. I think the biggest benefit is when you get a team in this kind of a model, is Kathy and Betsy were saying, you end up choosing them. And I treat any person that is hired, regardless of whether they're in-house or external, they're part of the team. And so if we can retain them and move them from project to project, then I don't have to worry about retraining. And frankly, if somebody does leave, Catalyst retrains them at no cost to my clients, which is very nice. Plus, you have that history, that internal history that, it's hard to retain. I mean, everyone at the sponsor company, this is all we're doing. So we live with it day in and day out. But it's refreshing when you have a team that you don't have to keep repeating everything. And you say, remember this? Or, oh, no, you weren't there. So now we have to tell you about it. The other big thing is CRA's building the relationships with sites. I have sites that have said to me, I want that person back. And I know that I can turn around and say to Catalyst, what can we do? They love Mary or whoever, and they want her back on any other study we're going to do. And we'll have a way to work through that. All of this lends to higher quality data. Because what you're able to do is, I want everybody working on any study that I'm overseeing to look at the whole study and to look at the whole subject. And and that means considering everything that you do, thinking about the impact on the site, on the subject, and on the sponsor. And I like that sort of global view, if you will. And the more that you can retain staff, even as you try to or need to be flexible because your study got halted or, COVID came along, the better off you are. And it gives my clients, many of whom are absolutely new to the pharmaceutical industry and have never experienced the roller coaster of our lives, it gives them a lot of comfort because they feel like there's some amount of control, even as, we go up and down with life. So there you go. That's my
Maggie,
story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, Maggie, I just want to touch on, the one thing you said about study history, and having that longevity with the study. Think of all the challenges that we face in clinical research and the problems that we solve along the way. And when we lose that history, we lose some of that problem solving, right? So that causes inefficiency. So the more we can have, team continuity throughout the life of not only this project, but maybe future projects, it's the things that we've learned that we can carry forward that drive efficiency, and also people getting to know the client and knowing their standards and their SAS macros and, their platforms. It helps us be much more efficient, not only now, but again, like I said, down the road. So I think with that, we're going to turn it back over to Erin.
Yeah, thank you both for that insight. Having a consistent and dedicated team, I mean, it's so important. That's such a rough conversation from all our perspectives to have when there is attrition. And that can be a really key differentiator with a successful resourcing model. Maggie, can you share with us, in summary, why a sponsor should consider this resourcing model as opposed to the more traditional full service approach for outsourcing their entire project?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I think of it as virtual companies are now becoming a thing, right? And they became a bigger thing during the pandemic. But I helped set up a virtual company, almost 10 years ago. And I look at it in a similar way. People that are providing capital to companies, one of the biggest drains is a brick and mortar, infrastructure. Well, the second biggest drain is staff. And so where do you put your money? Okay. If you don't need a brick and mortar building, well, first of all, that frees you to hire whoever you want, because it's a wonderful thing. You don't have to pay relocation or do anything like that. So you're able to focus on the actual work, on the study. And so in the startup companies that I work with, control over the study is a big issue. I mean, I remember when I was, and this is public knowledge, but when I was at Aguron and they were working on their AIDS product and they were in competition with Merck, the CEO used to come down, and my office was near data management, even though I was a monitor at the time. My office was there, and he would come down and stand at the printer and watch the viral loads come across, because like the whole company future was dependent on this product, which was successful and took them to the next step. So they need control, but they also don't have time to spend it in the weeds, and they need to feel secure. Like, what we need to happen is happening. And we really want the best people, but, we can't offer them a full-time job, because that's just not in the budget. So what you want to do is come up with this nice balance of sponsor control, but a team that understands that and also is available and on the ready, and who doesn't freak out when things happen with clinical trials, because they're experienced. So, I love it when I get on a call where I've got like the CEO and the CFO, and I have a team, even, monitors, the data manager, the biostatistician, and they are like, oh yeah, we've seen this before. And this is what we're going to do, etc. And, it's critical. And I love it even more when we have a site call and the principal investigators are like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but you know what? This study is running more smoothly than anything else we're doing right now. So, frankly, we're gonna do our best for you. And that's like me turning off the video and doing the happy dance and then sitting down again, because that's what we need to do. We cannot afford in this industry to get a drug approved that isn't really worth it, or to kill a drug that was really good and we just couldn't figure out what to use or how to do it to get it there, or we ran out of money. I worked for a company that went public in 2008, and then they crashed, because of the whole economy crash. Very sad. So I'm constantly looking for that balance. I'm constantly looking to save money, time, but I won't give up quality of data, reputation of the company for running good trials, and making it fun, which means having a good team that you can work with and that wants to keep working with you. So, I might be a bit of an optimist, but you know what? I can tell you that I've had lots of experiences with exactly that outcome, and, it can work. Over to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Maggie. Just one more point there. One of the things is, to build on what Maggie said, the first thing we do when we're working with a client is sit down and listen to them. What do you need? Do you need a team of monitors? Well, we may bill that time and materials, so you're only paying for the time they spend. Oh, and you also need to outsource data. That's going to be billed totally differently, because you're going to outsource the project piece of that to us. So we don't say, this is the way we do it. We want to hear the way you want to do it, and then build all the resources you need around that for the time you need them. I mean, I've had clients call and say, I just can't handle study startup. I want to build an in-house monitoring team, and it's going to take me a couple months. Can you guys take it from startup through the site qualification visits and then turn it over. Sure, we're happy to do that. So it's a listening game for us, and then hopefully providing the right solution that's cost effective and has high quality.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Maggie, Betsy, and Kathy, for all of your perspectives and time today. At this point, we're actually going to turn it back over to Peter to open up our Q&A session with all three lovely ladies.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Erin. And just a quick reminder to the audience, if you have any questions, please just send them in via the questions widget. So that's the top right-hand corner box of your screen. But in the meantime, I'll just address the questions that we have now. So we talk a lot about limiting turnover. What do we do when there is turnover?
Okay. Thanks, Peter. I think that would be most appropriate for Betsy to address.
Okay, thanks. That's a great question, because nobody likes to have turnover. But as I said, we all know it's going to happen at some point in time. First of all, we ask that one of the things I love about our model, which I didn't mention, was the independent contractors sign a contract. And within that contract is built lots of caveats to make the project a success. And one of those is they have to give 30 days notice. So that gives me 30 days to go back into our network and find a good fit and then present that to the client. So hopefully that should only take a week to 2 weeks. There's overlap between the two people, and then we can turn it successfully over to the new person. And as Maggie mentioned, we do not bill for that overlap time. That's my problem. I don't want to bill the client for that. And that's the way we handle that. Now, on the client side, we also ask for 30 days notice from them. But if there's a problem with a monitor, we can terminate that person immediately. So although 30 days is requested, it's certainly not required if you think somebody is not a good fit.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you for that, Bessie. All right. So you all have made the resourcing model sound so positive, but there's bound to be some hurdles. What could they possibly be?
There are never issues, right? No. All right. So Maggie, I know you talked about some of these challenges, but could you give us some other examples?
Yeah.
Some of these hurdles.
Yeah, I think, well, listen, there are challenges with everything we do. You can't last beyond a couple weeks in this industry if you're not willing to face challenges and figure out a way to get around them. I have found that there are two big hurdles here. Okay, one is with vendors that don't want to share their toys. Okay, and I understand it. But if I ask Catalyst, listen, can you do the EDC on this program? But I'm going to hire. We've already got a couple of independent monitors that that work directly with us, or I'm going to hire a monitoring group who speaks Thai, for example, and they're in Thailand and they know this site. And I know you could put people there, but we already know them. And I've never. The challenge is it's never been Catalyst. It's usually been the other group that says, yeah, but we have proprietary information. I'm like, well, what proprietary information could you possibly have? Because we're the sponsor. We're the ones bigger at risk. And yeah, I know you have SOPs and I know that you have certain ways that you like to do things. But honestly, we are all in this together, and the people and the vendors that want to be flexible are the ones that are going to move into the future. And you know what? When COVID hit, boom, everybody saw that. Okay. I mean, the other big hurdle is convincing my clients. I actually, when we worked on COVID, and I can say this because it's in the public arena, I worked with Fujifilm Pharmaceutical USA, who did the original treatment studies in the Boston hospitals that were in the newspaper and came out and everything. And, they're a huge company. They're a huge company, but I've worked with them before, and they already knew. They're like, okay, who are we getting for data management? Who are we getting for stats? Who are we getting for, and one of the crazy things we had to do was to find somebody. We literally had to hire somebody to pick up PPE at UPS, rebox it so that it didn't say it was PPE, and deliver it in person to study coordinators because the PPE was being stolen off the loading docks at the Boston hospitals so that it could be sold on the black market. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, gee, I went to university to learn how to think. It's a good thing because this was nothing that they talked about there. But, it was, and it took me several years to get FPHU, as they are called, into that mindset. And then the other one is when you go to like a startup company where a lot of people have invested their personal money, their cousins and their third cousin twice removed and their grandmother and their neighbor's 8-year-old have all said, oh, all you have to do is hire one of these big companies and you just give them everything and they do everything. With some studies, that's exactly what you want to do. But when you're just starting out, especially when you need a lot of flexibility, the study requires it, like phase 2 or proof of concept, your dose ranging studies, things like that, and you've got a limited budget, you don't want to just throw your study over the wall. You want to find somebody that looks a little bit more like you and that gets it, that gets how important this all is and how whether or not you do this study correctly is going to determine if you will exist as a company. So I've had that conversation. Oh, yeah, but my sister-in-law's best friend works for, I don't know, big company, J&J. I used to work for them and I loved them. And they always use X for all their trials. Yeah, because the group she's working with does 10,000 patient studies in 50 or 60 countries all over the world. And yeah, I get it. But we need a phase 1 study done. And we need it done in this budget in this amount of time. So those are my hurdles on the vendor side, on the client side.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you very much for that. Just a quick reminder to the audience. If you do have any more questions, please just type them into the box at the top right-hand corner of your screen. But in the meantime, we'll address the next question. Can you provide an example of where you utilized a flexible resourcing model and it paid off in a positive way?
I think this is another one for you, Maggie, and I know you've given us awesome examples, but can you give us one more?
I actually, in the first virtual company that I helped to set up, the CEO was, he was a helicopter CEO, like helicopter parents. He'd run in and he'd like, and hit the blades and everybody would get all, and he did this virtually, did very well. And, and then he'd have to go back to fundraising and the basic science that he was working on, etc. And so one of the best things, so I had freedom to do whatever I wanted. So, and this was a study that was conducted in Thailand. I got a huge CRO over there that had a group of monitors that I knew one of them and I wanted them to work. And they're like, this will never happen. You have to hire us to do the whole study. I'm like, no, come on. We're going to have some fun here. Eventually it happened and the monitors were cracking up because as it turned out, they liked the data management firms EDC better than they like their own. And so, and then I hired that monitoring group. I had a separate EDC. Then I wanted a particular statistician who I knew would be really good with dealing with the ups and downs and also would interface well with the CEO because the CEO is just brilliant. A lot of the startup CEOs, they're brilliant people. You have to be able to talk to them. So I put all these little things together and we were in a board meeting and we had 3 phase 1s done within a year. And one of the board members who was also a VC said, geez, how did you do this? And our CEO said, I don't know, it was magic. And I was like, in a way I was like, it's not magic. We all worked really hard. But on the other hand, the fact that it went so seamlessly, I really believe it's because I had buy-in from every single piece. We got good pricing from every piece, and everybody shared their toys, and it was great. So, yeah, that's my story.
It's a good one.
Great. Anyone else have any contributions or anything to add on to what Maggie said?
I do not.
No? Okay.
Well, how can they possibly add anything to that? I mean, you know what? I will tell you one more thing. One of the most interesting challenges that we had doing COVID studies during the pandemic was, and actually this happened, I worked on Ebola also. So I'll tell you the Ebola study, which was even worse. We had to set up a hospital because the hospitals were all contaminated in Liberia. It was horrifying. And I believe everybody knew that hundreds of doctors and nurses died before they really knew how to even protect themselves. It was really awful. And so we had all kinds of ideas, let's pull a ship into the harbor and put all the patients on there, but then how do we decontaminate the ship? And so I was just writing away, doing my protocol, blah, 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 and letting everybody else handle the logistics. And I wrote this great study. It was beautiful. All the infectious disease people loved it. And then we couldn't do it because it required a certain number of blood draws, which to do a blood draw on an Ebola patient, every single time you have to do that, you have to suit up. And this wasn't PPE. This was like the hazmat suits in, 100-degree weather with 80% humidity, and go in there and draw blood from them and then leave. And then go back and do it again. And it was absolutely, it was just so bad. And so what we ended up having to do was we provided some minimal support to Doctors Without Borders, and they ran the study that was published. And people, of course, criticized it and said, oh, it wasn't well controlled, and you didn't get this piece of data, and you didn't get that piece of data. I'm like, you're lucky we got anything, because it was really a difficult situation. And every single vendor that worked on that project with us, I think because it was, a scary thing, was so cooperative and so flexible. But, I just believe that there are companies, I'm sorry, I will make a little plug, and maybe I shouldn't do this, but I think Catalyst has that attitude year-round without a pandemic, because you need to be able to go to your vendors and say, look, we have a major issue, and I need some creative thinking about how to solve this. And that's what I want to work with. And these ladies on the phone, they know that I work with other companies. I don't send everyone to Catalyst. But when I have a client who needs hand-holding and flexibility and a reasonable way to budget, I will recommend them. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and I'll find somebody else. But, and they will work for your trust. And I think that's what I expect of everybody that works with me. Okay, lecture is over. Your class is just...
Thank you very much for that, Maggie.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was great.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for that, Maggie. And just a quick reminder to the audience, if you did not get your question answered, you can still submit in questions. They'll be answered at a later date. So that just leaves me to thank Betsy, Kathy, Maggie, and Erin for what a great panel discussion today, and to Catalyst Clinical Research for sponsoring this event. Now, to all the attendees, you will receive an email shortly on how you can access the on-demand version or you can access it at our website, which is www.business-review-webinars.com. So now we look forward to sharing future webinars with you, so please do keep an eye out on our website, as mentioned, and follow us on Twitter at BRWebinars for daily updates and join our LinkedIn community group. So once again, thank you all very much for attending today's panel discussion, and I hope you all have a very nice day. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.